insert music here. Bob keeps fading in and out. And welcome to the Misdirected Mark podcast, a show about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you. We are explicit and you have been warned. Now pick up those mics and let's get on with this thing. All right, everybody gather around.
All right.
Time for the pre-show meeting. All right, first up, Bob. You know what? I know you're working really hard, killing it with the new setup. I know it's been a challenge, but you're really pulling it all together. Second on the agenda, Jerry, just want to say that I noticed last episode you're kind of really relaxing, getting into the banter of the show. Really appreciate that. I do want to bring up a topic for tonight. That is sidebar chatter. I think there's a good place for it in some of the show, but I always think we should be working on focusing on keeping the main topic moving.
Yeah. Hey, one question, Phil.
Yeah, sure, Bob, because that's what the pre-show meeting's all about.
Yeah, thanks. Do you think that the people listening think our pre-show meetings actually go like this?
I mean, I did when I first joined up, but most of the pre-show is just Bob setting up while Phil drinks coffee and watches TikTok videos. I wouldn't say it's been productive.
Okay, that's what's going on. This isn't a pre-show meeting. This is the opening of the show.
I can see it now. This is that thing where one of us mistakes a topic for something else.
Damn it. I usually see through that, but it totally got me. You know what, Bob, because your mic's flaking in and out, I'm just going to get us into the show. And with that, welcome to the 393rd episode of the Misdirected Mark podcast. Tonight, we are talking about productive play. And then we're going to head over to the conversation corner to talk about what's going on in our lives. But first, my name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
And hopefully I'm Old Man Logan.
Old Man Logan who flakes in and out, but you're in right now. So, cool. So first thing, this episode we're recording on Zoom, and not in Studio J, because we are all in lockdown.
Quarantine.
Well, technically not quarantine. Quarantine. Is
yes, we are social distancing or distancing socially.
Yes, we're flattening the curve. We broadcast out of New York State, and while we are in Western New York State on the far side, like almost the exact opposite of New York City, we are pretty much the epicenter of COVID-19 right now. And so we have been, for over a week, we have been all hunkered down at our places. And we didn't do the show last week because this happened really quickly. In fact, I actually had to last Monday not go to work. I was on my way to work when I got an announcement telling me to turn around and go back home and prepare to work from home, because we had a potential quarantine scare in the office. And we didn't have enough time to throw the show together in Zoom and everything else. But we did this week. So we took some time, mostly an hour before the show, and got everything set up in Zoom. So for the foreseeable future, this show will be running live on Twitch via Zoom until a time when the state of New York tells us that we can go and record a show again together. Yeah. So I miss you guys. I miss hanging out and having dinner before the show, and those things. We're gonna go a little off script today because I think this is probably this can be definitely our one thing, right? We'll kind of all talk about it a little.
Yep.
For me, this has been really bonkers the last couple of weeks. For a number of reasons. We were 2 weeks ago, the governor directed the State University of New York to switch to distance learning. My company supports distance learning for a number of SUNY campuses. And so for the last 2 weeks, we have been working around the clock to scale up to a volume that none of us can predict. And so far, we're holding the line, but it took a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of stress. I've been exhausted for days. I also had a project that just officially got canceled today, which was to move my one of our data centers in Albany. And I had been fighting for a while with my bosses to shut that project down because we can't go anywhere. We can't travel to Albany, and our movers are from New York City, and just none of that's happening. None of that's happening right now. So yeah, it's been like super stressful. Plus, I'm home with the kids. The kids are all sequestered until the I think like the 20th of April, but I think that's an optimistic date. I think that's just the date the school district threw out. There's a part of me that would be surprised if they even go back to school for the rest of the year. So we're all working out of the house. I've been out of the house a handful of times, a couple times to the grocery store and a couple times to just run and pick up some takeout and stuff. It's definitely weird. I had to shunt two of my face-to-face games into online games, so that's happened. But making it work, and I'm healthy, and I'm fortunate, that I'm, fortunate I got a job that's actually busier somehow during all this. So, and I'm fortunate that I can work from home. My office has always been set up to work from home because we're expected to be able to work from home on snow days and things like that because we support operations all around the state of New York. So we've always been expected, like if it's too snowy to drive in, just work from home, kind of thing. So we all have equipment and things like that to work from home, and we basically just activated all that. So my day-to-day work stuff is actually kind of normal. I mean, other than not seeing anyone, but like I'm still working, like just a lot, and that's kind of taken its toll exhaustion level wise. Plus, again, we're retooling the show one more time, right? Like I just felt like last week we really had nailed all the parts of the show. Bob had like thrown together all the gear, and it like went together really well, and like all together on the mics. Like we were really smooth and gelled really well, and I was like, oh, I think we're in the groove, like, because it always takes a little work to kind of get in the groove, and then bam, like now we're all online, and so like now we're gonna figure it all out again. So I am like kind of okay, kind of not okay, but functional enough that functional enough we can do this. So how about you, Bob? How you doing?
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. Apparently, I've got some kind of weird issue with my headset microphone. But I am in a similar boat to Phil as far as I'm kind of okay. I'm, like I'm healthy. That's good. I am also working from home. My place of employment has the capability for us to work from home, so I was already set up. Um, Things are a little slower for me. I don't have the hectic crush of things that Phil has. Um, so I'm just kind of chugging along through my day. And I thought I was doing better than I am. Turns out that I'm kind of numb to all of this. Like I'm just like in a state of like what? And it's the biggest thing is that all of my coping mechanisms for stress and problems are all hanging out with my friends at the gaming table and hanging out with the guys on the recording of the podcast on Tuesday nights and having dinner beforehand and all of that was taken away. And it's like, yeah, uh, we're still getting together online and we're able to talk to each other, we're communicating and stuff, but that face to face in person um, contact isn't there, and took me a little bit for it to sink in. Like man, this is kind of sucking some of the energy out of me. But we are chugging along. Like Phil said, we had to get a new setup together. I kind of didn't do a good job of it, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. I faded out on part of this and didn't get as much of it figured out before showtime that I should have. But we are on, and we are ready to entertain you, hopefully. So, Jerry, what's going on with you with this current situation?
First of all, Bob, I gotta say, I think you're doing a great job. We're up and running.
Thank you.
We had a 3-minute delay. We've had that before with the old setup,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're doing fine. Other than that, it's been weird for me. I'm the opposite. Because of what I do, I run a water treatment company that handles both Legionella prevention and also infrastructure damage prevention. So we're worried because none of our people can work from home. We all have to be out in the field, and we either are going to be able to work or not. And because of our description, we weren't sure that we fell into the category that the governor had for essential services. So this past weekend was a little nerve-wracking because I'd shut the office down for Monday because our governor said that we're shutting down non-essential services, which is a good idea, but nobody knew if they were coming back to work, and I really didn't want to have to put all my employees on furlough. But luckily, 8:30 Monday morning, I got a call from the Department of Health, and they informed us that we were not only qualifying under several categories, but get out there and get your work done. So my address, I'm actually doing better today than I was last week, because last week I was waiting for the shoe to drop and have to tell everybody that works for me to go home and not come back for a couple months. So, and they all want to be at work. I've told them all that if they want to stay home, they can. If they want to take a furlough, if they don't feel safe, let me know. But everybody wants to be at work. Everybody wants to be doing stuff. And I opened the office up yesterday at about 9:00 and told everybody, if you want to come in, you can. You don't have to. If you want to take the day off to relax. And my office was full of people by 11:00 because they wanted to be in the office, even though I was paying them for the whole day.
Yep.
So that's good. So people are moving forward. It's going to be slow for us business-wise because a lot of places are telling us not to come in or they're shutting down. But I think they're going to roll with it. Same thing, though. My big social interaction has been gaming. Every other week I have 4 face-to-face games, and now we're doing it all online. So I'm trying to teach myself how to do Roll20. Last week, Friday, we couldn't have our regular game because we were still getting things together. And so Chris and I sat together and we put together a Netflix watch party and watched Spencer Confidential. And it had gotten a lot of bad reviews, and neither of us could figure out why. It's actually a really fun little action movie. It's got a lot of humor. It's got some really good pacing. They do a good job of adding a lot of character development that's all very, I don't want to say subtle, but they don't beat you over the head with things. And in the couple of cases, they actually hang a lampshade on a few things. It's like, that happens every time. And they'd say, that happens every time, and play with that. It was a fun little movie. I think they put it best when they said it's basically a Lethal Weapon script that got turned into a Spencer story. But if you have an hour and a half, it's a fun little movie. I gave it 8 out of 10 for action and comedy. And keep an eye on the Slack room because we're probably going to talk about doing a few more watch parties when everybody's got time, because it's a lot of fun. But other than that, we're here, and I want everybody to stay safe, stay home.
Yeah.
If you don't have to go to work, don't go to work. Don't go out and socialize with your friends face to face. We all want to go out there and get our hugs in, but this is not the time to do that kind of stuff. And it's really kind of pissing me off that I'm still seeing people doing stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I still think they should round up all the spring breakers and put them in a detention center somewhere.
Yeah.
Quarantine.
Hey, our president has a bunch of detention centers already set up,
Wow.
And there's enough Americans already there, so
I'm not sure what our president's doing because I've stopped listening to the president. I only listen to the Governor Cuomo now.
Yeah.
Can we write him in November?
You know what? I this point, I feel like Sanders and Biden should just step aside, let Cuomo just take the.
Mm-hmm.
I've never I can't even imagine. I know, I'm sure this guy hasn't stopped working in like 3 or 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And he has given a press conference every day.
Yep.
He has been amazing. And I wasn't even a huge fan of Cuomo, to
not
be
at all.
honest. Like I like, until this outbreak, I was not a huge fan of him. I got royally screwed on my union contract a couple years ago. I was kind of pissed like about him for a while, but man, I mean, when you want to talk about true leadership, like stepped up, he has been factual. His conference today was really hard to watch. I don't know if you watched it, but they're predicting the peak infection rate's going to hit New York City in New York in 2 to 3 weeks. And he was just rolling through, the projected numbers for hospital beds and ventilators and stuff like that. And it is grim, right? It is like really grim. And he's railing against, the US government, who's not doing a thing.
No. It's I mean, I give him credit. This is the second time in the last 5 years that we've had a major environmental biological crisis in New York State. We had a big Legionella outbreak, and he did the exact same thing then, which was made a sweeping general law that clamped down on everything and just stopped the problem if people followed it, and then began to roll back and modify it, but did what needed to be done, which was just say, that's it. It's why we're still the only state in the country that has a Legionella law.
Yeah.
He's got some experience at this and knows what he's doing with it. And he stands behind his convictions, which I think is important.
Yeah.
He's not backing down on this stuff.
And he's human on it, right? Like he's talking to, like, I mean, I thought it was, he named the law that, has basically told senior citizens to stay indoors and stuff. He named it after his mom, right? Like he was like, that's what we're talking about. Like we're talking about actual people. Like these aren't percentage points. These are people. Anyway.
I also think that he's doing a good job of coming out on with the polo with the symbol instead of constantly coming out in the suit and tie. Seems to be mollifying people's feelings. So it's not just, it makes him more human looking. He's doing a very good job of spinning, which is important.
Yeah, I think he just wears the suit when he's in Albany. Like he's today he gave his talk from the Javits Center, which is being set up as a mobile hospital, and he's been in the polo, and he's always on the weekends when he does the talks. He's in his polo, not a suit. But typically when he's in Albany, he's full suit, but he is polo, like he's on the ground right now. He's touring different sites for emergency medical centers and things like that. So, and I know, and I'm raving about Cuomo, but there are other governors who are stepping up, right? The governor of California, the governor of Washington, governor of Ohio. I mean, like, and I'm missing some, like
Illinois,
governors are generally
Illinois, Delaware.
Governors are stepping up and making this happen, except for the Texas lieutenant governor, who I'm just going to take a moment to call out on the mics. This asshat is just basically like, well, if some elderly people got to die to restart the economy, I guess that's going to have to happen. No, it really doesn't. And again, he was not that young either. So, you first.
Yeah, exactly.
I
don't know about
keeping
anybody
my
else,
parents.
I'm not ready to sacrifice my parents and other people's grandparents so that the Dow will go back up 500 points.
You can fuck right off. Like,
yeah, I mean, my parents just got back from vacation, and so they have quarantined themselves for 14 days, so that if they don't get sick, but also B, if they've caught something on their trip, they don't affect anybody else. I literally ran over to their house the other day because they ran out of some basic groceries. I picked up some groceries, and I go to their house. I unlock the back of my dad's Equinox, put everything in the trunk, close the drown, and as I'm pulling out, I call him, and he comes out and gets it, so there's no face-to-face contact with anybody.
Smart.
Our staff, we've instituted a huge lockdown cleanup procedure, and nobody's allowed to come in anymore to visit. And you just have to make some changes. It's a weird environment to live in.
It's really strange. Like, it's strange. I'm home. Like I went to Wegmans, and I know this is going to sound real first world problem-ish, but Wegmans is like kind of eerie. Like we live in a place where the shelves don't run bare, even if there's like the shelves don't run out in a snowstorm because people are just
Okay.
like, like I'm gonna go grab like a gallon of milk at Wegmans, and then like
They tell us that a storm's coming and it's going to drop 6 feet of snow on us in 24 hours. We do not immediately run to the store and clean the shelves out.
nah.
But this, for some reason,
Well,
Dude.
I'll tell you why. Because it's the same thing I experienced when I was I lived in the center part of the state where they get about half again as much snow as Buffalo does. And it's the same thing, is that because we've grown up with the idea that you always have, 4 or 5 days worth of food in your house. You don't let things run down that way. But now we're being told it might be 2 or 3 months, and that's why people are panicking, and the media kind of whipped that into a frenzy.
yeah.
But
Yeah, like before this, like I was using Instacart, right?
Mhm.
Like just to order food,
Mhm.
food and have it delivered. But like it's too iffy. Like I have to go in and like make decisions. Like, okay, like that, like that product's out, but that one's basically the same thing. I'll just get that one, right? Like
Instacart's actually been horrible lately. I placed like 12 orders over the last 3 weeks. They've delivered one, and they don't tell you that they're not delivering. You make an order today to be delivered on Saturday at 10 o'clock, and at 9:30 on Saturday, oh, we don't have that. They haven't set it aside for you, even though it's a non-perishable. That's I'm done with Instacart for a while. I think they've been a horrible job of setting these apart.
Instacart works when the store's full.
Yeah.
And there's some things I'll tell you offline. There's some things you can do to actually make it a little better.
Yeah.
But it's just like you can't do it right now. But
No.
hey, I just want to make a quick correction. It's 2 to 3 weeks of food.
Yeah.
The chat room just got a little panicky about months, but no, it's 2 to 3 weeks. And actually, to be honest, we're in like full lockdown, but essential services even includes takeout. So like last week I went and got a pizza.
Mhm.
Bob did too.
Oh yeah.
Like you can still do all those things. I went to Tim Hortons the other day and got a cup of coffee through the drive-through.
I ran out today and got Burger King for lunch.
Yeah, you just can't sit anywhere.
Yeah. No, there's a restaurant in Lancaster called Frank's that we often order from at my office. So yesterday when everybody came in, because they all came in, I got them all lunch, and Frank's they said we got a limited menu, but they were open for lunch. You just had to place your order and come pick it up, and you walk in the door and they were top notch. Somebody at the door with gloves on. You walk in, they wiped the door down. They handed you your food when you paid. They took your card, wiped it off with a Clorox wipe, ran your card, wiped it off again, handed it back to you so it was clean. And then they opened up the door as you walked out. They hand you another handy wipe so you could wipe your hands off as you left in case you touched anything.
That's top notch right there.
They were there, and so you knew you were getting. It's the image. You felt safe with that because they were taking all the steps you need to take.
Yeah, Wegmans has got somebody who's wiping down the carts.
Yep.
So, like when I got my cart, it was like the handle was still wet from where they disinfected it. It was like I was like, okay, cool. But I mean, even then, like as soon as you turn to walk in, they've got a Purell dispenser. So like I Purelled on my way in, I Purelled on my way out. I put the groceries in the car, got in the car, took out my personal hand sanitizer, washed my hands one more time before I put my hands on the wheel.
Yep.
And then, and then went home and like actually washed my hands with soap. All right. We'll probably get a little more into this in the conversation corner, but it's worth, listen, we are humans who are doing this. And so it's inevitable that we need to, there's a point of this where we talk about it. So I'm happy we talked about it a little here. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the conversation corner. But in the meantime, I want to get us ready to jump over to our feature segment. I can't think of any announcements right now.
I can't think of any either.
Nope, I don't have any. If there are Kickstarters going on, I'll be honest, I haven't been really paying attention to them. I'm sure there are. If people want to shoot them our way in the next week or two, we'll make sure that we, mention some of them on the announcements.
Yep.
But
I mean, really, the big one is the tallest 5e and Cypher version just ended a couple days ago.
Yeah, we can't help them.
So
I know it was close, right? I know, they were struggling.
They were struggling at like $500 billion over.
Yeah, I think they were struggling for like 25 seconds on,
and then they funded.
I think the only thing I would say is check Drive-Thru RPG every day. A lot of publishers are putting out either pay what you want or free or half off deals on a lot of their stuff, is a good time to look at those Kickstarters that you missed, or pick up an odd item from an author whose works you already like. A lot of authors are putting all their stuff on sale at really good prices. And even things like, I think, was it World of Darkness, they were doing one book a day for a week that was free. They did Vampire one day, Werewolf one day,
Yeah, they were
Changeling
working
one day.
their way through their catalog.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
and Free League has been doing deep discounts on all of their catalog, including the brand new Alien RPG.
Nice.
really?
So, I might go pick that up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So anyway, just keep an eye on that kind of stuff. And if you belong to our Slack room, there's a channel for our Kickstarters where we're talking about all the deals every day. So check that out as well.
I'm also just going to really quick pop up. Schmitty mentioned Princess World is Princess World is still up and going. So give that some love.
Is that a Kickstarter?
Yep.
Oh, I played that. That's an amazing game.
Yeah. So that's up, and that's close to the end. That's
I
think it's in like the 36-hour range. Ludo Cherry, which does all like the cool geekware. I think they've got one that's still going, I think.
That's the one with the shirts and the skirts, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought 2 of those.
All right, so we're gonna move over to the workshop.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any music.
We do not, unfortunately, have any music because
I don't think I want to scare anyone else in my house by just spontaneously bursting
into
the workshop. Yeah, I'll just do like a chill one. Okay. Hang on. I can do this. And I have a coffee nearby. So, okay. Workshop, being productive, moving the game along. Workshop, don't suck. Okay.
You know what we need to do? We need to see if we can get like a dubstep remix of the workshop, you know?
Oh, I would love like a Skrillex, like really like somebody just, like turning the dial and then just fucking dropping it, right? Like that would be dope as shit.
All right.
Okay. Cool. The workshop. All right. Productive play is what we're talking about tonight. Yep. Which we're going to wind up having to define, and then we're going to wind up having a whole discussion about it because one, Jerry's got some feels.
Yep.
And actually, once we talked on Slack, I think we wound up on the same page. Yep. But I like we're going to talk about what it is. It's not a term that gets used a lot in RPGs. It is a thing that kind of on the show we've bantered about before. So I wanted to talk about it a little more. And it comes from something that I wrote 5 years ago when I wrote Focal Point. I wrote a chapter about productive play. And over the years, again, like I've used it on and off, but we've never really like pulled it apart and talked about it. So we're going to do that tonight. We're going to talk about what it is, what it does, how important is it? Because the answer is kind of. And is it always needed? And the answer is no, it's not always needed. So there's a couple hints.
Right. But Phil, I think before we get started, I think it's really important this time that we frame out just what do you mean by productive play?
Right.
We don't have our favorite bumper, but I'm going to give you a little taste. Hang on.
Go ahead.
You are in the presence of definition, Panda.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best I can do.
Excellent.
Yeah. We'll be working on getting our audio merged into Zoom soon enough. All right. So productive play is when the group is moving through the play of the game in a coherent and timely manner. I'm going to break that down so that we're clear what we're talking about. So moving through the play of the game, meaning that the actions of the group are advancing the game forward.
For example, moving from encounter to encounter, finding clues, closing out a mystery, or setting up for the big heist.
Yeah, those are the things that kind of move us, through the game. The next part of that is coherent, right? Meaning that the group is working together.
And that means like they have aligned purposes, or they're collaborating, and they're being respectful. They're listening, being inclusive, working together, etc.
Okay, and then the last part of that is timely, that progress is occurring in a time frame that's satisfying to the group. And I'd be very clear about that, right? It's satisfying to the group, meaning that people are not bored, feel like time's being wasted or feel like they're being rushed, those kinds of things.
And this is going to vary a lot from group to group because it's influenced a lot by the game you're playing. It's going to be influenced a lot by the group you're with. And it's going to also be influenced by just how much time you have for your sessions.
Yeah, right. Like it's a very subjective. That last piece is very subjective because different games definitely have different demands for like what is taking too long, that kind of thing. All right, so it's best probably to contrast things in this case to help better define the word productive. So I'm going to talk about a few things that are not productive, right? Player table chatter, right? So if Bob and I, if Jerry's running the game and Bob and I are having a little side chatter about, the fact that Picard is now free for streaming on CBS, right? That's not helping any part of the game move forward. Arguments, right? Having a rule argument is not really productive. That's not to say disagreements about rules aren't productive or asking for clarification, but like having arguments about them. I refer you to the 1980s.
Yes.
I don't have this problem anymore at any of my tables, but many an argument in the 80s, sometimes in the 90s, and even a little into the early 2000s, disagreements about rules. But the other place where arguments often occur is planning, right?
Yes.
Planning is one of those things that can devolve quickly, right? Like a little bit of planning is good. And then there's like a really sharp tipping point. Like, have you ever gone like out in the ocean, like where like the shelf drops, right? Like you're walking, it's like 3 feet, 4 feet, and then it's like 20 feet deep. That's how I feel like about planning. Like there's a little bit of that shelf you can walk on with planning at the table where it's like useful and productive. And then after that, you've just fallen into a fucking hole. So that's definitely not productive. And a character side conversation that doesn't advance the plot. That's actually not productive, but it's not bad. And I know we don't have it here in the notes, but Jerry, why don't we just at this point talk about that a little? Because there is a connotation that productive means good, but we're trying not, like the definition didn't say anything about good.
Yeah. I think it's the idea that non-productive sounds bad more than productive sounds good.
Right.
And this is where I feel that character conversations in game that either establish facts about the world, help to develop a character's background, are just amusing to everybody there as long as they're in character, are all good. And I think that even though they might not be advancing the story that you're presently playing, they can be used as a hook. But that's only as long as they're entertaining to everybody there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail later on.
Yep.
But I think that's where my big sticking point is with productive play. It's the idea that non-productive play isn't always bad if it's entertaining everybody. And we'll go into that more later on.
Yeah. And I think that's fair, right? I think that's very fair. That I think early on we'll just make sure that it's clear here. And then, like you said, we'll unpack it a little later.
Yeah.
Non-productive play doesn't mean that it's bad play. What it means is you're not advancing the game forward. And when I mean game, and I'm very deliberate about this term, I'm not saying the word plot, right? Because plot is a book thing, and plots are more like predetermined, right? Because that's what you do for a book. Like you figure out the plot of the book and then you write the book. We don't really do plots for games because games are organic. So anytime I'm saying the word advancing the game, you can change it in your mind to advancing the plot if that makes it feel better. And what we're really talking about is that if a story, if a game, adventure, module, scenario, whatever you like to call them, I still like module because I'm old. It has a literary structure, typically Free Talk's pyramid, right? So, an opening, big bad rising action, climax, denouement, right? But there are other ones, right? Tri-fail cycle, all of those things. Productive play means that you're actually moving through Free Talk's pyramid, right? Like you're you're actually progressing through it. And non-productive play would mean like you're just sitting somewhere on the pyramid, right, and not going anywhere. Okay. Again, not inherently good or bad. There are places for both of them. All right, cool. All right, with all that now said,
The mic.
what does it do?
Well, I think it's focused on moving the play of the game along. The idea is to move through the beginning, middle, and end of the various scenarios and arcs that we have in the game.
Mm-hmm. And again, this is just what I was saying, right? The heart of most RPGs, we're creating a story through play. And again, like just kind of pushing through Freetog's pyramid because it's the simplest story. It's the simplest structure that I think you can build a story on.
We also see it, though, in other media. We're conditioned to see our play in terms of stories. We have expectations of moving along that structure to one of the other ones. We can sense what's occurring. We can sense when it's not. And we expect to see this in movies and TV shows and comic books and novels and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so we think that way as far as how the game is going to be played.
I also just hit my mic and put my hand on my head. I didn't realize what Jerry had done until I noticed, and then I bumped my own mic. Right. So based on your preferences, you are going to have a higher or lower tolerance for what is productive and what's not. And the best example I can give of this is Jerry and I have very different opinions about the show Sense8, especially about the pacing of the show Sense8. Right. We both agree that the story does not progress quickly. Right. I do not think it progresses faster than you do. But I'm very okay that it doesn't, in that there's a whole bunch of B plots that are kind of spinning along. There's a whole bunch of non-productive character building that I'm there for the ride, right? Where you are very much like they could drop 6 episodes from this series, tighten this whole shit up, and you would have been much happier.
Okay, I'm going to clarify one thing.
Yes.
I don't object to the side arcs. I object to the nothing is going on in this scene for a minute, and it doesn't advance the plot, the characters, the story, or anything else. It's just tonal. We'll talk about that later on. I think it's a good show, and I think people should watch it. I just think there's a lot of scene setting where they establish something, and now they're just going to put the camera here and let it run for a minute and a half, and nothing happens. It doesn't advance the characters.
In other words, non-productive.
Yes. It would be the example of a GM who has you, and I've had this happen, I've done it myself, is where you're spending way too much time describing what the city looks like when they walk in, and all they want to do is go talk to the merchant. That's what's going on. It doesn't do anything. You're set the scene and just kept going. Doesn't mean it's bad, by the way. Other people liked that, so it doesn't mean it's a bad show, and doesn't mean that my opinion's right on that. It just took me out of it for a little while. So
yeah, exactly. And this is exactly to my point, right? Like different people will have different thresholds by which they can take that and not take it, right?
Yeah.
And so really what we get out of this is 2 things, right? One is that in most games, progressing through the game is actually important for the enjoyment of the game, right? Like actually starting a I'm going to use the word story, even though story is the thing that's created after, but starting a story and completing it, right? Going through Freetog's pyramid is enjoyable. And 2, as we just discussed, productive play is somewhat subjective, right? Yes. So what's productive for one group may not be productive for another. And that is also important because you will have to find your own balance for this.
Of course. And it's going to vary from group to group. Even as a player, you might have to, when the group dynamic changes, you may have to adjust a few things.
Absolutely, right? So somebody could come into a game that is like, for instance, like I play Adventure League, right? Which means that like I am about encounter, get through this thing and done. And you're, the group that they've joined is like, and we're going to spend the whole evening just talking to the patrons of the inn tonight. Right? Because that's for them, like that's their enjoyment, right? And so you see where these things can kind of brush up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. So the next question that comes up is, what does non-productive play do for a game?
Mhm.
And at best, it doesn't advance the play of the game. It often keeps players in the exact same place. At worst, it's a breakdown, and it breaks up the ability of the group to function as a group.
Right. So in either case, right, the game isn't moving, right? Because that's what we mean by productive, right? The game isn't moving, it's stalled somewhere. And sometimes that just means like the players remain geographically in one place. Like if you get into like a deep character discussion in a dungeon, like then you're not moving to the next room, right? But other times, non-productive play can be that players don't know where to go next, right? So this is common in mysteries, right? And I will say, GMing mysteries is super hard.
Yes.
So when they are not productive, sometimes it will be your fault as the GM, and a lot of times if you're doing published adventures, it's the fault of the adventure, because it's hard to get good mysteries. Some games do it better than others, right? I think Gumshoe is very smart about it because it's very deliberate about it. But you can get stuck into a non-productive section of a mystery when players don't know what to do next and they're kind of floundering. And when I used to run Conspiracy X, we had a name for that we had hit the pulling teeth section of the game, because like it just felt like we were pulling teeth, like I was pulling teeth to get to the next scene. And that is, now looking back on it, completely it was my fault because I didn't use any published adventures. It was completely my fault for not structuring the mysteries in a way that the players could move through it more productively, right?
Yeah, but that also can often be the fault. Most published adventure mysteries, unless they're written very, very, very well, tend to have this, the players will assume this. And 90% of the time that I run the game, the players don't make any of those leaps of logic, or they run off and do something. Or in one case, they just decide to kill all the NPCs until one fights back, and that's the bad guy. Because there were no clues that they could find.
Yeah, and that's how you know, right? So you're in that productive, you're in that non-productive space when the players start escalating to do stuff because they're looking for a reaction from the rest of the world, right? They start doing proposing dumber and dumber things. It's funny because I was just thinking in the back of my head that if I was ever to run Conspiracy X again, I would run it in Night's Black. I would run it using Night's Black Agents rules. Like I would totally rerun that game as not with vampires. Like I would still put in all the aliens, but oh man, would Night's Black Agents work for that game? Sorry, I'm waxing a little here.
Okay.
Like just,
I'd like to say
you can dream about that a little bit. I'll let you.
Yeah, I don't think you'd argue with me if I proposed it somewhere.
I'd be down for that. I'd like to say, by the way, that Dumber and Dumber Plans is completely subjective to the players.
Oh yeah. The players will think it's brilliant, right? Like, but you're just like sitting there as the GM going, "What are you guys doing?" Like, but there is a point. There's a tipping point when players get super frustrated where they do things like, "Let's go murder the king. That'll get us some answers," and you're like, no, like, we have done things about mysteries. We can talk about salvaging mysteries later. All right. But again, I was just talking about that non-productive play space, right? So it can be geographical, as in physically you're not moving, but it can also be story-based, where you're not moving to the next part of the pyramid.
And so there's a couple of reasons. What are some of the reasons that we have this non-productive play occurring in games?
Right. So we were just kind of talking about this with that past example, but information gaps, right? If players don't understand what the information they have is telling them about where to go next, or if you didn't write it so that the information they have points them to where to go next, then they can flounder.
Yeah. We can also have disagreements between the players on what they want to do. They might have a couple of courses of action, but not know what they want to do, or disagree on what should be done. And we've had that happen a lot in some of the games I've played in recently. So the game just stalls.
Yeah,
for a few minutes.
Yes. I have many a memory of a previous gaming group where that was excruciating. Next one is lack of focus. So the group's not really focused on advancing play that night, right? Like they might be at the player level, right? Having engaged in other distractions and diversions. Like for instance, and we are all in the same gaming group, the DCC game can be prone to bouts of lack of focus.
Yes.
And for the DCC game, I have a different threshold of how much we have to be productive in the game, because it's kind of our Thursday night beer and pretzel blow off steam night. And so if it devolves into some stupid jokes or a YouTube video here and there, I don't crack down on it as much. But I don't do the same thing on Sunday nights. Sunday nights I tend to be a little tighter.
Sometimes that can be done even in game. I've played in and run quite a few games where it's obvious that the group just isn't quite focused on the adventure, but they're just having a good time playing their characters and interacting and goofing around in game. And that's perfectly okay. It doesn't advance the game at all, but it's advancing the fun for everybody at the table. And that's the real point of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's, I think that reason is the reason why some of my, I say my, but Bob's here as well, so I'm going to say some of our Tales from the Loop session mysteries were so long. Like I remember reading the book where they were like, you can get through this mystery in 2 to 3 hours, and we would play those mysteries for like 4 sessions.
Yeah, we went long on a few of them
because we would just like, we were playing like what happens at lunchtime. Yeah. Right. Like the kids are sitting at lunch having an argument about, you know, our friends, the machines, the equivalent of the Transformers. And again, we were all entertained. So it was fine that we weren't actually progressing through the story because we were all okay where we were, but the story wasn't actually progressing. Like we weren't getting any closer to solving that mystery.
My last Eberron game that I ran, I wrote 4 pages of notes because they're getting ready to go into a big mystery. And there was one minor encounter at the beginning, and they made it, I think, a paragraph and a half through my notes because they went off to explore a lot of cool things. Bridget wanted to see about trying to free a trapped fire elemental, and they talked to people in town and just had a good time. And none of it advanced the plot. They were actually in the denouement of the previous adventure and about to get into the next adventure. And we really just kind of did role playing for the whole night, and they had a good time. And I'm fine with that. I enjoy those, but it didn't advance the story yet.
Yep. And that's kind of what we were talking about at the beginning and what we're going to talk about more. In fact, we're going to actually talk about it right now because we're going to address the question is all non-productive play bad? And it's not.
There you go.
And to Jerry's point, right? Entertainment is the number one exception when non-productive play is just fine. There are times when characters become involved in a scene that does not advance play, but everybody at the table is having a good time.
And this often happens when they're either having a conversation with another player or another NPC, and everybody gets involved. Sometimes when they're just enjoying looking around a town and looking at what's available, they've encountered a brand new piece of terrain or a new feature that they all want to play with. Hey, magic works differently in this area. And so all of a sudden the spellcasters just start screwing around with magic to see what happens. You also get things where they just do something that further describes who they are. A character decides to talk about role-playing out a discussion with their mother, or they decide that their character really loves cheese, so they're going to go off to look at where the cheese makers are and decide what's there and try things. That's a GM hook I had. I had a player who loved the cheese, and all I had to do in any game was describe that there was some unusual cheese over in this town, and that was going to bring the players there. Didn't have to do any other hooks besides that. But that's okay because everybody enjoys it. And it's
characters from Fantasy Wisconsin.
Yes.
Did you say we have a cheese castle in our kingdom? They do. They actually have a cheese castle in their kingdom.
Yes.
It's not made of cheese. Let's be clear, because Wisconsin weather would be weird, and that would be. It is made of, I think, cement or something, but it is an actual fucking castle. Like you can see it from the highway. It's a fucking castle.
After a while, a cheese castle would smell.
Yes.
Is there cheese inside to be consumed?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of cheese inside the castle. From what I've been told, I didn't go in because by the time I saw the cheese castle, I had eaten so much cheese in Milwaukee that I looked at the cheese castle and then averted my eyes because I was so full of cheese by that point. Okay.
I think that's the better of the two options, actually. So.
All right.
Okay.
So the thing is about the scenes that Jerry's talking about, these types of scenes, and the ones that we also described, like Jerry's Eberron game, my Tales from the Loop game, there is value in these scenes, right? While expanding characters doesn't move the game along, it has value intrinsically because it makes characters deeper and players more nuanced, and that is good.
Yeah. I think we said this before. It's entertaining, and that should always be one of the big goals in the game. As long as everybody's being entertained, we don't have to be productive, but it's when it goes from entertaining to not that becomes an issue. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about what happens when that goes on in our next segment.
Yes, we are indeed, which is the signal that we should get ready to jump to the chat room and see what they're up to. But before we do, Jerry, I hear you bespoke crafted a trailer. Did not take one out of the stock list that we have. So tell me about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
On Down with D&D, join the Mad Wizard Sean Merwin as he delves into details, news, and advice on playing the world's most popular role-playing game. And look him up because you can play around with the green screen that he accidentally stepped in front of. So go for it.
Yes, that was hilarious.
He has a very neutral wall in his house that he took a picture in front of, and boy, was that fun.
My favorite one is the picture of Sean holding the book. The book cover is Sean holding the book, and then it just keeps. Yeah, bookception as it just goes further in. Yeah.
By the way, Phil, you keep bumping your mic. You may want to move it a little away from your face. It keeps bouncing. We can hear it on the audio.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just popping or I don't know. I'll try. I'm half Italian.
The table, maybe? Yeah.
Oh, I'm definitely. Hang on. I can solve this. Hang on. It's the mic stand is touching the table, and I'm definitely bumping the table.
That's what it is.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All right. That should solve that problem. My bad.
That's okay.
When I put it in and was angling it, I didn't realize that the mic stand was actually pressing up against the table. Because I'm like, no, I've been good. I haven't actually struck the mic, but I am like spastic and I'm hitting the table as I'm talking.
Honestly, this is what we get for configuration number 347 of the Misdirected Mark podcast.
Hey.
So
it's been a while since we've had
bumps in the road.
But we will not be stopped.
We will not be stopped.
No. The signal cannot be stopped, right? Like we will keep broadcasting.
The signal kills fascists.
Oh man. You know what? I could kill some fascists this week. We should not talk about that.
Oh man.
So Bob, what's going on in the chat room?
Anyway,
they're all with us. No real specific questions or comments on the topic at hand at the moment. There was some talk about cheese because cheese. Senda's still kind of on the why because of the volume of cheese, but
there was a lot of cheese.
There was a lot of cheese.
So much cheese.
Oh man.
I'm happy that you guys.
Not a bad thing.
I'm happy that I think we started recording just before my daughter's online Taekwondo class ended. Like her dojang was like, oh no, we're not closing. We're just going to start streaming classes.
There you go.
So they're taking them from the living room and it's loud and I'm in the basement. So it's louder because all I hear is like, feet hitting the floor kind of thing. But I think it ended right before we got on the mic. So
and as anybody who's played a game in your basement knows, your daughter is not light of foot when she hits the floor.
I know. When you see her, you don't think that and she's not that small, but you don't think anyone that small could be that loud. I'm pretty sure that I'm quieter than she is crossing the living room floor.
Yeah. It turns out that the picture of Sean holding the book with the cover being Sean holding the book with the cover being Sean holding the book was done by Sean from Tabletop Bellhop.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's great. By the way, for people who are on podcasts, since we're all in Zoom, one of the things that Zoom lets you do is put up a virtual background. And we have all selected different virtual backgrounds. Bob's virtual background is the cover of Deities and Demigods. And in fact, I believe it's the first edition cover, the Cthulhu cover of Deities and Demigods. Jerry's got that is definitely for sure. That is Ebron.
That is Sharon City of Towers, my favorite D&D artwork.
That's a great piece. I don't know if you recognize my background.
I do.
I think my background is the Gibson. I am. This is the background from Hackers.
Yeah.
I'm in the Gibson right now. Which is now my default Zoom background for all things is
Planet.
Yes. I found a wonderful site that was full of Hackers wallpapers, including most of the desktops.
Nice.
Like, so
I almost went and grabbed the Matrix code.
Oh, of course, classic.
That's a classic.
That was my screensaver for like 20 years, I think.
Yep.
I did. No, we'll talk about that we'll talk about that later in the conversation corner. So if we don't have a lot of chatter, and it's okay, I'm just happy people are here, and I know we're just in weird times. I know pretty much almost everybody in that chat room is in some sort of lockdown right now. So based on where they live. So although maybe I'll just, maybe my future background will just be a Matt Morrow. I didn't realize Matt was in the chat room. Maybe I'll get myself like a nice Matt Morrow background. Yeah.
Because Matt's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I could get I have no shortage of Matt Morrow artwork in the encoded directory, including some badass covers. Oh, I could put the, make a good background is the cover from Iron Edda.
Iron Edda would be good. Avalon would be good.
Yeah. Oh, the Avalon. I love the Avalon cover. I still love the story where the Avalon cover wasn't really even supposed to be the cover. It was just artwork we ordered. And then Arcadian mocked up what the book was going to look like and used that piece of artwork. And we all looked at it and was like,
yep.
Nope, that's the cover of the book.
That's the cover right there.
That was only supposed to be an interior piece. But once John put it on the book mock-up, we all looked at it and were like, nah, nope, that's it. That's the cover of the book. We're done.
Yep.
Good times, man.
All right, shall we dive back in?
Yeah. Let's get into our roundtable segment, and I'll start us off with. Sorry, I'm gonna just pause for a second. Matt's right. The Tarrasque. How can we forget the Tarrasque picture? That one, that picture's totally badass. Okay, cool. Entering into our roundtable discussion again, talking about productive play. I'm going to pose the first question as a GM. What techniques do you employ? I originally had it as to keep the game productive, but I'm going to have it as to either keep or get the game to become productive again.
Okay. Well, I would say, first of all, this is the hardest part for the GM. Sometimes you have to keep an eye on things. You have to cut off a player who's soapboxing or remind them that there's a time limit. Sometimes just ask them to put on the phone for a minute. Other times you just have to remind the players, or better yet, have an NPC remind them that there is a plot to follow. They'll get off base and not know where they're going, or they'll get too sidetracked. That being said, if the players acknowledge the GM reminder and go back to the non-productive play, then that's also a good indication that there's something that's entertaining to them. If you make that comment and remind them, hey, don't forget you've got to go rescue the princess, they're like, you're right, we do. But anyway, about the guy in the corner who looks like a goblin, then that tells you that's what they're focused on. Same rules apply as they do for leading questions. So basically, as long as everyone is involved in it, I let the non-productive in-game play continue until it's an indicator that one or more of the players is no longer entertained. And at your table, you'll often have the outlier, the person that you can tell is getting bored with everything quicker than everybody else. And you can quickly decide when you see them start to glass over, it's time to move on with the story. And sometimes you'll hear it from a comment or something that works that way. And The other thing to remember is that in-game non-productive play can often drive productive play if, as a GM, you pay attention to what they're doing, what they say, and take notes in it for later use.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that non-productive play can lead to more productive things later.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I have a couple techniques that I use.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is I will sometimes just ask the players, right? Like I will just ask, like, are you guys cool? You want to just keep this lunchroom scene going, or do you want me to, hard cut us over to the next scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll just ask that question, right? And if people are like, no, it's cool, leave the lunchroom scene going, then I'm like, cool, let's keep going, have a good time with it. That's probably one of my first techniques, is to just ask. The thing that I basically wind up doing is, and we've used this term on pandas. And I guess the best way to describe it is that I have basically two tools when it comes to this, right? Breathe and push, right? Which now makes it sound like we're delivering a baby, but in some ways we kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, sometimes when a scene is non-productive but entertaining, I will let it breathe, right? So I won't push on anyone. I'll just let that scene open up, right? And by breathe, we didn't really mean by air. We meant more like wine, right? Like you open up a wine and let it breathe, right, to deepen the flavors. So along that same lines, if that non-productive play, that character exposition, or two characters just wind up having like a really deep talk that's not advancing the story, but it's like really deep about their characters, I'm going to let that breathe, right? I'm just going to kind of lean back a little on it and just let it breathe. And then sometimes if we need to get moving again, then I need to push, right? And my push is usually, it involves asking some questions, right? So if I want to push a scene forward, then I start with, okay, cool. So it sounds like you guys, finish up that deep discussion. Where are we going next? Right. And I can tell you that my tell that I'm pushing, because I just did it as I was talking, is I do this thing where I take my one hand kind of knife style and place it into the other hand, like a cut kind of thing. If you catch me doing this GMing, I am pushing you into the next scene, right? Like, where are we going next scene? Like chop, chop, right? Chop, chop. But I will do that to I will do that, and then I will use a like more aggressive framing to set the next scene. So I will basically just ask the players, like, all right, cool. So you two are having this conversation. We kind of pan out from you, Bob, right? What's your character doing while Glenn and Tony are having this conversation?
Yeah.
Right. And that's me. That's push, right? That's like, okay, I'm like, the conversation was good, but it's kind of drifting now. So it's time to push this game back into gear. And I find that my GMing winds up being this this juggling of those two techniques, right? When do I let it breathe, and when do I go push? And then in the middle of that, if the game's just doing its thing, like, then I just let it do its thing. But when I sense that something's like it's slowing down, or we're in that non-productive space, then I'm kind of looking at those two tools. Do I want this non-productive scene to breathe, or do I want to get behind it and push? I think that's probably the best way I can describe it.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to question 2 then. Question 2, as a player, what do you do to keep the game productive as a player? Bob?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things is you have to learn how to read the table.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're sitting there and you're playing the game, if you're in, but other people aren't, you got to notice. You have to recognize that fact. And I'm going to just put my hands up in front of my face a couple more times because I'm part Italian, although I'm not. So yeah, learn to read the table so that then when you see that this is happening, you can try and figure out, and it'll mesh with some of the GM techniques as well. you're going to have instances where you're like, oh, okay, they're doing a thing that's not related to the story we're supposed to be heading towards, but it's entertaining. We're all having fun. Okay, cool. But if if it's not, then hey, in character, Biff, weren't you supposed to go and see if you could hack the Gibson? You know, prompt the other characters. Ow, sorry. Prompt the other characters to see if you can give them a push or a nudge. Um, and a lot of the GM stuff fits in with that as well. But the first thing is, as a player, you've got to be able to read the table and see. It's not just you doing your thing and then you go into your own zone while everybody else is doing their thing. It's stay engaged, be in the moment, be in the game, and then see how everything is going. That's my thought.
Okay.
What about you, Phil?
So I'm probably good at this when it comes to decisions and planning, and less good about it when we're talking about. Now, I just legitimately hit my mic. Hang on, I gotta put my hand on my head. Okay. So I'm good about this when it comes to planning and decisions. I'm less good about this when it comes to just general play and conversations and stuff. So as a player, like if I sense that we're having trouble making a decision, or I don't see someone kind of leading the planning efforts, right? This is a bad habit from my day job. I will immediately jump into that role, right? Like I have learned not to seize it right away, but I also abhor a vacuum, right? So
project
like
managing in a project.
Yeah, like if somebody isn't going to manage this, I will manage this, right? Like so I try not to do it right away, but like if I go sit down at a con table and we're supposed to break into a thing, and in a few minutes nobody's organizing the table and how to break into this thing, I will.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll ask, like, is it cool if I kind of help out here, right? Like, can I facilitate a little and then kind of get people moving? And that's me, right? Like, I know that's me. That's my personality. That's a lot of other things at play as well. So I'm really good at that part, in helping out. I'm actually bad at all the other parts, right? Like, I'm not great about side chatter. I'm not great about like I'm super sarcastic. So I'm not great about occasionally making a snarky remark to one of the other players. Like I do it to Bob all the time. I'll say like a little something to the side or something, and then we get like a little personal chuckle, and that's not helping the game progress, right? Like so yeah, I'm good and to be honest, I'm also bad at that at work, right? So I'm bad at work about also being chill in meetings and stuff like that. I'm great at being in charge of meetings. So yeah, so I'm like 50-50 on this. Like I am as a player sometimes good at this, sometimes like sometimes not good. How about you, Jerry?
I think a couple of things. First of all, always take notes so that you can keep up with what's going on. So if the story does get off track, you can kind of help to wrangle the players back in. Be sure to engage the story and the NPCs. If the GM puts something in front of you, at least engage it once, even if it's not all that interesting, because that might help the rest of the players kind of work themselves in there. And watch the other players to see when no one is no longer entertained, and remind the rest of the players we should go back on track. If one person's giving a long monologue and everybody else is kind of zoning out, don't wait for the GM to say something. As a player, you're more than welcome to step in and say, that's really good, but we really need to get focused back on this. And sometimes, as a GM, and I'm really guilty of this myself, you can get wound up in the table chatter as well. But try to keep the sidebars to a minimum. If there's something you want to discuss, put a pin in it and come back to it later on during a bio break or during a post-game aftercare. And if you can't, yeah, go ahead.
I do try to do that thing with the index card, right?
Yeah.
Where I try to write them down during game so we don't, because again, if you get it out of your head and onto paper, then your brain will let go of it and let you go do something else.
That's right. And lastly, if you can, work the table chatter into the game. In the Eberron game I'm running, one of the players, out of character, made some joke about someone being the last son of Krypton. And that was about to start an out-of-game discussion of comparisons of superheroes. Immediately, one of the other players jumped in and said something along the lines of, oh, I heard about that lost out of Krypton. Didn't that sink when the Delcure arrived? And only one of them survived? And all the players jumped in And for 3 minutes, they were talking about they were talking in character about the Superman myth and how it was actually just a children's story that nobody really believed. And by the end of it, in our version of Eberron, there was an island named Krypton that sank somewhere in the ocean. And everybody tells these legends about this lost prophecy person that walked around. And what could have been a side chatter turned into part of the game and gave us good character and good interaction, and also allowed some of the players to kind of toss things in. One of them, well, you know, my uncle talked about that, and we'd never heard about that character's uncle before. Well, yeah, well, he raised me when my mom went away, and all of a sudden that got into the story as well. That was good. That was not me as a player. That was another player in the group that just jumped in, took the reins, and kept it from beginning being side chatter while still acknowledging the joke that the original player started. And I thought that was masterful, and I enjoyed it immensely. It did nothing at all to progress our plot along, but it did give everybody a nice hook for the world and got everybody role playing, interacting with each other, all 5 players at once. And for me, that was amazing. I had a great time with that. So, all right. So that's what I say about players. Phil?
Yeah. So, all right. Third and final question for our open table discussion. As either a player or GM, how do you manage non-productive play in the game, right? Because non-productive is definitely a thing, and it's definitely okay to have in a game, but how do you kind of manage it?
Well, first of all, as I said before, if it's entertainment, I try to let it go until someone's no longer entertained. Good stories will sometimes come from that. Sometimes good adventures and hooks and things that other players can jump in on. Other than that, I try, often unsuccessfully, to keep my own diversionary comments down to a minimum. Sometimes as a player, you have to be a little bossy and remind somebody else that, hey, Bob was talking there, or I think we need to get back to the game. And this is a last resort, though. But I've been in games where there are players who like to add little comments in all the time or little side stuff, and they'll sometimes do it when somebody else is in the middle of their discussion, and interrupting is a trigger for me to begin with. But there are times that if it happens too often, I'll just stop them. Hey, so-and-so was talking there. Let them finish before you say your thing. And that generally will back them off a little bit. And I don't wait for the GM to have to say that, because I think as a GM, there's this cultural thought that the GM is kind of in charge of the table. And as long as the GM is letting it go, that it's okay. And if you as a player see somebody else who's not enjoying the scene, don't wait for the GM to step in. You can do it more politely than I just did, but you can remind the party, hey, I think we're supposed to be doing this, or ask the GM a question, or do something else that brings the group back together. And that's part of Phil's, stepping in and being the manager at the table. But I think that more players should work together to kind of manage the table as a group, because if it happens often enough, then the players are setting up a culture at the table that keeps the in-game chat or out-of-game chatter to a minimum and keeps the diversions from going. And you have less non-productive play that doesn't actually become entertaining. So, Bob?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I kind of touched on it in the previous question too. Is like if you're paying attention and reading the table, you're going to be more aware of something that's going on. So if you see it, then don't be afraid to act on it. Like you said, if everybody's waiting for the GM to take control, things are gonna get missed because the GM's wrangling a whole bunch of stuff, and sometimes the GM's gonna miss some of those things. So you can't put it all on the GM. It is a collaborative table. Everybody's there to have fun. Everybody's there to enjoy the game and tell the story. So be a part of that. Be proactive. Pay attention, and take action if something needs to be acted upon. That's solid advice all the way around. What about you, Phil?
For me, again, this kind of goes to that breathe and push thing, right? Like, I love non-productive play actually in a game, right? Like, so while I may have coined the term productive play, I love good non-productive play. I actually love to be entertained. And so my one weakness to this is that sometimes I get so entertained by something that's happening that I may forget to either read the table really quickly or start to push again, right? Like if two characters like like I remember we were playing Tales from the Loop, and we were playing, and I said it earlier in the thing, we were playing Our Friends the Machines, which is it's basically Transformers and Decepticons. And I basically just told the table, like, look, you're all fans of the show, right? It's like the newest thing in school. And Tony, being Tony, just gets into this argument at the lunch table with the other characters about episodes of the show, and he's just making this stuff up, right? He's just totally fabricating plots from shows, and like sounds like every kind of whatever, insert your favorite fandom kind of thing. And I was like so entertained with it that honestly, if anyone else at the table wasn't, like, I didn't notice, right? Like, because I was just like, I thought it was hysterical. And in fact, I not only thought it was hysterical, but my NPC who was at the table like also got into the argument as well and started making fun of Tony. So I do think, like, again, it is about breathe and push, right? So it's about like, when do I want to open the scene up and just let it do its thing? But it's also being aware of that feeling, like, and this when you this when you watch TV shows, this when you watch movies or read a book, that itchy feeling you get, like, it's been a while and nothing's happened, right? It's been a while, nothing's happened is really another way of saying it's been a while and we have not progressed, right? So, at that moment, I will start to ask questions and try to stir it back up. But yeah, my big blind spot in this is if I become too enamored with it. And I am easily entertained if players are doing a good job, if players are being their characters, and my Sunday night groups are really solid for this. I can easily veer off and kind of forget that I'm supposed to be pushing this thing along when I'm just sitting there like, oh, this is amazing, but we're not actually doing anything, right? Like we're so yeah, I think that it is about, one, it's about reading the table, and two, it's about your own internal clock. Like, the other thing is my Sunday night games, it's the same thing with my Tuesday night game. These are my face-to-face friends. So it doesn't matter how long it takes us to get through a mystery and adventure or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. If I'm at a con, I am way more dialed into this, because I got 4 hours to get a game started and finished. And so I can only have so much non-productive play in a one shot. So I tend to push far more than I allow things to breathe in a one shot, especially early on. Towards the end, like, if I get to hour 3 and we're coming up quick on the set piece, then I might let a few scenes breathe. But I don't like to let things breathe in the beginning, because I'm always afraid I'm going to be trying to pack the climax of the game into hour 3, 30 minutes into the hour. And I've got 30 minutes to kind of jam the climax and the denouement. Basically, it was good seeing you. It was good seeing you, honey. I got to go to work, right? Like, so I'm very much about being kind of more on task at the start, and I will kind of in a one shot, I will crack down more in the beginning, and then gradually loosen up as I feel like we've made enough progress. Cool. Yeah. And I think that's tricky, right? I think time management, Jerry noted it in the chat room, right? Time management in con games is a big thing. I write 3-hour games to run in 4 hours. I know other people who write 5-hour games to run in 3 hours, and that's Yeah, sorry, Jerry. Yeah, I tend to write my adventures very, very, like, I always tell people, look, you may get out of here early, right? Like, you may leave, we may be done early, and I've never really had anyone ever tell me that's a problem. Like, some people appreciate that 30 minutes to like go get a drink, a snack, or something and head to a game. But I just I hate when, like, and I've had it happen when I ran games early on where I'm trying to finish the denouement and the next GM is like literally in the wings of my table
Standing
because
over your shoulder, tapping
Yeah.
their foot.
right, because they need to set up for their game, right? Like, I hate that. I hate that feeling. Like, oh, please, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I was bad about my timing. Like, oh.
Of course, then there's the third time I ran the ordered number engine, and we had Glenn in the game, and because of a scenario hole that I did not notice, we ended the game. We ended a 4-hour game at about the 35-minute mark.
Oof.
Because he figured out how to solve the entire problem very, very easily. And I'm like,
no.
whoops. But being Glenn, he also then sat there afterwards and we had a good time with it. But he sat there afterwards like, okay, I've got some suggestions. I'm like, yes, please lay them on me. And we tightened that scenario up very quickly because Glenn's amazing at that. But yeah, it was okay. Well, I guess that's it.
That's I've never had one that's ended quite that quickly, but that's the worst feeling, like when you're sitting in a game and you suddenly realize there's a plot hole in the game and you're like, oh, right, and then you're like, well, I could fix it, but you'll have to ham fist it, right? There's no way you're going to fix it gracefully.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ham fist it? Do you just give the players credit? But then they also signed up for an adventure. Like, they want to be entertained. Like,
well, luckily this was a play test, so
yeah, it's not as bad.
Everybody who signed up knew that it was gonna be kind of, we were trying to work out a few kinks, and it just didn't. The following 3 versions when I ran that same scenario though went smashingly because of what I learned from his game. So,
yep.
Never stop learning. So,
yep.
Never design in a vacuum. So, yeah. So I think that's does that wrap up our productive play?
I hope so. I think that was pretty good. I hope people got a little little something out of that. And kind of take that idea. Again, I think there's power in naming things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That idea of when things are moving and when they're not, and why it's important that both of those things occur in your game.
Yep.
Cool. Yep. Head over to the conversation corner.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
So I figure we could just kind of, we could talk about specific things, but we could also continue our talk from earlier, right? Like, it's hard, especially this is our first night back on the mics since we've been locked down, right? It's hard not to talk about what's going on, and like adapting to it, right? Like, it's really weird because I'm like already within a week, I'm like kind of like things in my house are completely like changed around, but also feel kind of normal. Like very quickly things are getting like reconfigured in this house to adapt to this. Like, the kids aren't in school, and I'm working from my desk upstairs. Like, it took me it was a mess. Like, I was really stressed out on Monday because my primary work machine, my MacBook Pro, had gone in for service for a new battery. And Friday, I get a text that my MacBook is repaired and shipped back to the Apple Store. And then I get an email almost the same time that is like, and the Apple Store is closing. Like, Apple is closing all Apple stores around the world. And I'm like, well, fuck, like, I need so my backup machine for work is a MacBook Air, which is delightful, but it's 13 inches and the MacBook Air can only push one monitor, where my MacBook Pro can push 2 monitors. And my setup at home is like 2 24-inch monitors that I'm very comfortable with. So I first had to venture out into the world to get my my MacBook from the Apple store. Like, and the Apple store was like on complete lockdown. Like, they were people in front of the store, and they would let like one person in the store. They would go get your machine and then send you out. So I got it, but it was white, right? So I was like, well, it's going to take me, like, I was like, by last weekend, I didn't realize we were going to lock down at work. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to bring the MacBook with me to work, and I'm going to restore it from my backup drive that I have at work, because I have a full backup of it at work. And then Monday morning, I'm on my way into work when I get an urgent text message telling everybody turn around and go home. One of the guys in our office had spiked a fever over the weekend. Turned out it wasn't COVID related, but nobody knew that. Mm-hmm. So we immediately all, locked down. And I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to rebuild this Mac from scratch, which I can do, right? Like, I can go back in, but I'm gonna spend like 2 days loading applications, which I'm already in the middle of trying to ramp up a whole bunch of stuff. I don't have time to rebuild a machine. Luckily, my office mate was in the office when the message came out. So I texted him and I'm like, are you in? I said something to him and he said something about being in the office. And I'm like, are you still in the office? And he's like, yeah, I'm packing up. I'm like, can you just grab all the shit on my desk? So he just grabbed a whole mess of cables, grabbed my backup drive, all my adapters and things like that, put it in a bag, and basically left it on my driveway, right? Like, just dropped it on my driveway, texted me, and was like, he was at the end of the driveway. I picked up the bag. So my first 2 days, I'm trying to take all these emergency conference calls, from my Mac Air. The kids aren't in any kind of routine. So I was in the basement, on the staircase, at my desk, on the couch, I was moving the whole day. Right. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I don't have my Mac going. So I'm trying to restore my Mac in the basement, on the game table in the basement. It was a hell of a week. It was, by midweek, I had gotten the Mac back together. The backups worked, and it restored the whole system, which was fantastic. I got cables from Amazon to cable the Mac into the other ports on my monitor, so I didn't have to even open my Mac anymore. Now it just sits closed on my printer table, and I can just work from my monitors. And very quickly got set up again to work. And now I'm okay, it's cool. I get up in the morning, make myself some breakfast, walk right over to my desk, log in, jump on Teams, start chatting with everybody. It's weird, but I've also I did this last week. I think a number of you were there. I did a Zoom session with a bunch of Misdirected Mark patrons, right? A Friday luncheon. Mm-hmm. And that worked really well with all you guys. So I'm doing it with my office tomorrow. So Wednesday, I was like, hey, I have a personal Zoom account, and if you want to have lunch together, just grab your lunch and meet me at noon on Zoom. And a whole bunch of people in my office decided to do it. So that was actually really cool. People were like, oh, it'd be great to see each other face to face. And so we're going to do that Zoom luncheon. And then I'm going to do another Misdirected Mark Zoom this coming Friday. I got to just put the announcement back out in the Slack room to let everyone know. So I don't know, I'm all right. I don't think I'm great. And I'm suffering from the same problem you guys are. So, and I'll stop talking in a second, but one, I'm naturally introverted, right? I was an 80s kid. I was a latchkey kid, right? I was prepared to be kept at home for a plague. But I'm an introvert. So my main form of recreation, social recreation, is playing games face to face. It's why I don't play a lot of online games. One, because I'm fortunate enough to have good friends I can play face to face with, but I actually get something out of playing face to face with everyone, sitting around a table, being, before the game, during the game, that kind of thing. And having to switch everything over, I kind of realized it's not, it's 80% of the spoons. I'm getting an 80% draw on those spoons. Plus we're eating at home, so I'm not eating away my feelings because we're eating healthy food. And Amazon's super slow, so I'm not buying anything. I've lost all my avenues for coping, and I'm like just kind of working on how to kind of self-care, which of course means I'm playing a ton of Minecraft in the evenings, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Schmitty's got the server running. It's hugely helpful. Everybody's back on, which is really cool. Because I think it just as we started to realize we were going to have to start locking down, we started the new mod pack, and new mod pack always brings everyone back because it's a new time to start exploring and stuff like that. So it's been really good to have that kind of interactions in the evenings, and to and Minecraft's always good. Like Minecraft's always good for me for spoons.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop talking. You guys can
Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, for me, it was realizing a couple things. When the big toilet paper supply rush problem occurred in Buffalo, where you can't get toilet paper, you also can't get hand sanitizer or Clorox wipes, which is a problem because I've got to supply some stuff to my field reps. I'm still trying to figure out we're getting down low on supplies. We're going to figure that one out. But somebody asked, have you been out shopping for that stuff? I'm like, no, because I'm a little bit of a hoarder. Those of you who have seen the rest of Studio J know that I collect things. And it turns out that I was like in my basement and I stepped in the bathroom in the basement and said, do we have any Clorox wipes in here? And there were 13 containers there, and there were another 6 in the pantry and 4 upstairs and 2 in the other bathroom. I tend to buy things when they're on sale. We've got like 35 rolls of toilet paper in the house, plus 2 boxes of the infinity rolls, which are the giant ones that you put on the spool. I've got like 30 boxes of pasta. Like I think it was my wife who made the comment that basically I live my life just in case we have like a 4-month zombie apocalypse. And so that hasn't been as much of a problem. But just like the rest of you, my big social interaction is role-playing games, and it has been for a very long time. And so I would normally use that as kind of a de-stressor from what can often be crazy work time. And the last 2 weeks has been extremely stressful because in addition to the normal everyday work things, I've also had the pressure of, am I going to have to close the office down and put a bunch of people on which I don't have to, thank God.
Oof.
But I was like,
burden.
I was like losing sleep and getting nervous and coming home and still being wound up. The Minecraft server helped a lot. And getting back online with gaming is making a big difference. And those of you who have been on Slack know that I've checked quite a bit there. So it's been nice.
I'm actually I have to not go on Twitter for a while. Like I gotta stay on Slack. Like I've been getting super first of all, if you follow me on Twitter, I hope you're okay. Like I've been retweeting my anger about I'm retweeting tweets about how angry I am at the federal government right now. And I have noticed like I'm getting super angry about it. And I gotta just like, I'm gonna have to stay off Twitter for a while. And I almost got myself banned today. Like I was about to push the button on a tweet that I'm sure would have gotten me banned by a government official, and deleted it at the last minute. And I don't think I was wrong. I'm just pretty sure that I could have gotten banned for it. So I was like, yeah, I have to, like, I'm gonna have to go. I have to go somewhere happier, which is I could just go to the Slack room, and I don't have to rail about the government. I can just talk about other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep falling into the trap of I need to check Twitter to see what horrible thing they're doing next so I can prepare myself mentally for it coming down the road. And it's like that's not good. I have to take more breaks, and if I miss some stuff on Twitter, I miss some stuff on Twitter, and it's just that way lies madness. You don't want to do
I'm
that.
lucky enough that I haven't gotten good yet at managing my Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So my Twitter is a mess. So I go on it like once a week at most.
Yeah.
Because I haven't figured out how to like put people in the different groups and all that kind of stuff. Actually, when we're all done with this whole social distancing thing, I'm just gonna bring my laptop over to one of you guys and have you guys help me straighten out my Twitter.
Sure, we can help.
Because right now I get way too much stuff. I don't know what to cut out and whatnot. And the other problem is way too many people. God damn it. Twitter, have a function that when somebody changes their fucking name, that it tells you who the hell they are. Because I suddenly see some name on, I'm like, I don't know who the hell this person is anymore. I'm just gonna delete them. I don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
It's some really weird anime reference or some reference to a song sometime. Like, I don't know who this is. I'm just gonna delete them. And then I found out, oh no, wait, that's somebody's wife. Crap.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm in the Twitter hole again. I got to close this thing up. All right.
Yeah.
It's out of habit. So I know it's bad because I'm not actually following everyone else. I'm just clicking the little magnifying glass to see the hashtags and the current news. And that way just lies anger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I found out during the first week of work from home last week, I realized that for probably various reasons, I wasn't sleeping very well when I first started. And I would wake up in the morning and I'd be all like intense, like I have to get up because I like to work from 7 to 3 and I have to be, on time because I'm never late. Like I'm always early or at least on time for work, whatever. Like I've been so paranoid most of my life about being late that I usually end up 15 minutes to a half an hour early for whatever it is I'm doing. So that's one of my things. And so I'd be, wake up at 6:30 and be like, So the next day I was like, screw it. And I set my alarm for 7 o'clock and I'm like, I'll just log in as soon as I get up and And then it finally dawned on me that I don't have to rush to get logged into work and to make sure that I'm clocked in at 7 and work from 7 to 3. It's like, there's no commute, dude. There's no commute. Just get up, log in, and if you have to stay logged in for an extra 15 minutes, whatever, it's not going to break anything. I don't have to get in the car and fight traffic. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, right. So now I've got myself in a rhythm now of get up at 7 o'clock and, clock in when I clock in and then sit down and have breakfast and a cup of coffee and whatever. And I think part of that stress of not focusing on trying to be on time is like, oh, okay, that's kind of like backed off some of the anxiety of the whole thing. I apologize for the audio. It's
that's okay.
I think it's important. I've seen a number of people and I think people know I tend to be hyper productive like that. But I am the first one to say, because I saw a number of tweets go by about this, and I am in full support of it, right? Like now is not the time to pressure yourself to write a novel, learn a new language. Like, you know what? If you made it to work, if you made it online to work and got your work done, and you're still in your pajamas, whatever, man. You know what? You take I actually, I don't think my to-do list has ever been smaller than right now. I pared down so much shit. I was like, I'm just not pressuring myself to have to do all this stuff. If I wind up running out of things to do, my to-do list has a huge backlog. I'll pull some stuff out of it. But honestly, for self-care purposes, I have set the bar, I put the bar on the floor. Get through work.
You got a limbo under that thing.
Yeah, you can't limbo under it. It's sitting on the floor. Get through work, make sure the house is clean, eat food, engage in multiple self-cares, not even a self-care, which is my normal full running is do work, come home, eat, take a nap, get up, do encoded stuff, then go play Minecraft. No. Multiple self-cares.
Yep.
And you know what? I'm not 110% at work. I'm working hard from home, but I'm also answering questions about homework and I'm solving Chromebook printer issues and I'm opening jars of peanut butter or whatever. It's not happening. I'm working to the best of my capability at home, but it is not the same level as if I was in the office, fully dialed in. And not that every day I'm fully dialed in at the office either, but this is what it is, right? Like, and if I got to work a little longer, on the day to finish up a few things, then I do. And if there's all of a sudden a lull and I got to like, help somebody with their chemistry homework, like I'm doing that too, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm not putting any pressure on myself. Like we are in uncharted water.
We
Like
have enough external pressure that putting more pressure on ourselves is completely unnecessary. We don't have to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Do not like look, if you want to, if you're like, cool, I'm gonna, I'm excited to learn a new language. But if you're like looking at Twitter being like, oh, I should do something with this time off, it isn't time off, right? Like
No.
Yeah.
I keep telling my kids, like, we're not on vacation here. Like,
Yeah.
I'm working, you're working.
It's
like
this super weird space, and I've seen so many creatives and gamers referencing the same thing, which is that classic episode of the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone, where the guy, it's like the apocalypse, he finally has time to read all the books he wants to read, and his glasses break.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, I finally had time. And it's like, well, we're all working from home, and we kind of sort of have more time to a certain degree. And it's like, oh, I could play all of these games that I wanted to play, but I can't play these games because I can't go out with my friends and play the games. Or, like there's all these little things. Like I could sit and actually write that novel now. Oh, but like there's all kinds of weird, depressing crap in my
Yeah.
head. And it's like, I got to deal with that too. And it's like, you don't really have more time. Maybe some, but
Yeah.
it's a totally different kind of thing. And it's weird. and once you make peace with it, then you can kind of settle into a groove. But it's not easy to make peace with that.
No.
I have less time now, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I have less time because I'm having to do more stuff juggling at work, so it's not even more time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's even more important for you to make sure that you're getting some self-care in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did on a gaming note, I did pick up I have it here. I can put it in front of the camera the camera's not going to do it. I just got my physical copy of Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells. Which is this old school inspired RPG that is science fantasy. It's fantastic, right? Like it's the artwork is super funky, like 80s-esque. The rule system looks pretty straightforward. It's got a little bit of black hack, a little OSR-ish. It's definitely not an OSR game, but it definitely has it's definitely picked up some OSR DNA in it. Anyway, I'm kind of flipping through reading it. I'm reading a couple games simultaneously. I'm reading this one. I'm reading the Raven's Purge campaign book for Forbidden Lands for our campaign.
Yeah, baby.
And in preparation to get ready to write an incursion for the Trophy Kickstarter, I'm reading Trophy Gold right now. Trophy Gold's for like really small, like it's a pretty quick read. But Solar Blades and Cosmic Spells is like this big fat book, right? Like it's 450 pages.
Wow.
But I mean, there's like a shit ton of tables in here, right? Like there's tables for like damn near everything.
So it has a DCC.
I love tables. I love tables.
Yeah, I mean, listen to the author says. I'll let me see if I can find it really quick because they name some of their. Here it is. This game was inspired by a ton of other games, including the Black Hack, DCC, Beyond the Wall, White Hack, Call of Cthulhu, Genesis, and many more. I'm like, well, with that lineage, like I'm reading, like that's cool. Like I could run like some off the wall space sorcery. What does it say? It describes it's a little kitchen sinky in the way that I normally I don't know. It's getting me. What did they say the setting is? It's science fiction, it's fantasy, it's space opera, it's sword and sorcery, it's post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes. So I'm like, it's got like a little bit of Thundar, like a little bit of Thundercats.
Ooh. Okay, now you've got my interest. Thunder and Thundercats would be an amazing setup.
Right? Like it's interesting. I'm reading it. we may play it
Cool.
at some point. Like
It sounds good.
probability runs high that we may play this game at some point in one of our groups. The other thing that I'm kind of wrestling with, and Bob knows this because we were talking about it on Slack, is a month ago we were making characters for Headspace. And then we lost a session because 2 weeks ago, I had asked, 2 weeks ago, Tony had gotten a fever, not COVID related, but had wound up getting a fever. And we were like, yeah, don't come out for the game. Right. Like, so we didn't play. And now we're like a month out, but I'm having trouble wrapping my head around Headspace right now because the default setting for it, the Vancouver setting, is about a city that is it's been caught in a tsunami, but there's also a plague in the city.
Like, oh, great.
And there are
awesome.
Right. And there's quarantine zones and there's corporations covering it up to protect their bottom line. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't know if I can run this game right now. Like, I'm having some concerns like that's going to hit too close to home. Like, I don't know. Yeah. And so much of the character gen is tied to the setting that I don't know, like we're having the talk now about what to do with Sunday, and and not everybody's like in the best headspace. And for me, I don't want to not play because not playing isn't going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
But maybe playing something else and not playing that might be the trick. So
maybe we should just throw some swords on the virtual table.
Yeah, swords, dungeon world, something, right? Like I'm kind of cycling through some ideas. Like, do we dust off our mask characters, and play some masks for a little while? Like, our masks campaign wasn't dark.
No.
I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about it more on Slack as we're heading into the weekend. But I was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, wow. Like this setting might not be what I'm up for. Like I'm having very visceral responses, right, about it. Now, the other option is we just pick one of the other settings and we have to redo characters.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about that as well. Because there is a setting book that Senda wrote the forward for. Mm-hmm. There's a setting book and I have it, and there's like all these other settings that are interesting. But because character gen is kind of tied to the events of the setting, we'd have to like pick another setting and then and start over.
Yep.
So we could have that talk too. Yeah. That would be
not the worst thing.
No, not the worst thing. It's a thing.
Yeah.
We have to figure it out. But I don't know. Like, part of me wants, like, I'm okay with both of our fantasy games because they're like totally separate from reality, and escapism now seems more important.
Yep.
Like it is drastically risen on my list of things I need my role playing game to do now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's tough. It's tough, man. Like, I don't know.
It's all part of the self-care.
You find something that you enjoy doing, and I mean, we've had to put a bunch of things off. I know we were considering doing a once a month movie night. That's something we're gonna have to figure out how to finagle it. I may ask you guys for some help on a couple others. We were gonna do a once a month big box board game night.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll. I mean, there's some online versions of how to do board games, but it's hard.
We're not gonna do that one at this point. We were talking about doing a once a month Lego night, and movies. That's not going right now.
Nope.
I don't worry. I won't run out of Legos in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
We'll be good on that.
Yeah, then I think we'll be okay. There won't be any run on Legos.
Yeah.
Jerry has them all. There isn't going to be any.
I think we should definitely start talking about, like, maybe Saturday night doing another Netflix viewing party.
Yes, I definitely think that's a good idea. I don't know what's available on Netflix to watch.
We pick something like, fun and.
There's a couple of movies that we've talked about watching. I just don't know how to get them into a watch party. And we can
it would all depend on what format they're in and where they're located.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because I belong to a Facebook group that does horror movies all the time. They're always streaming different horror movies. the good ones and the bad ones and the really bad ones. But I don't know what they use for that, and a lot of it seems to be kind of sketchy from the beginning. But that's still something that should be looked at.
I've known a couple of people that just sat there with their finger on the play button, whatever format they had the same movie in. They're just like, get ready to hit play. And
Yeah,
then,
3, 2, 1, clicky.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1, click.
Yeah.
Wait,
Okay.
is it 3, 2, 1 and then click, or do we click on
yes, it's 3, 2, 1, clicky. That's how you do it. 3, 2, 1, clicky.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because now my son and I are home, and so he said to me this week, he's like, what I really, he's like, I want to watch a couple movies this week with you. And I was like, awesome. I'm like, what do you want to watch? And he's like, I want to see the second Kingsman movie because I haven't seen it either. And I was like, oh, we can totally watch the second Kingsman movie. That's no problem. And then he's like, and I was like, well, what else do you want to watch? Because I was like, I got an idea. Like maybe we should watch, like we could watch Predator. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, could we watch Bloodsport? And I'm like, oh, we can watch Bloodsport. I'm like,
oh, if you do that, let me know. I've never seen Bloodsport.
Yeah, so Dante and I may watch it on we may watch it on Friday night.
That's cool.
It's nice. It's like some decent, like it's some cool father and son.
It's amazing, actually.
Yeah. At some point he's gonna watch Predator because Predator's fantastic. But the other day, Saturday, I was doing some stuff and I was like, I'm gonna just put something on to relax to. So I watched A-Team because that movie I love that movie so much. It's so good. So anyway, we should probably, right? We're coming up on 10, right? We're supposed to roll into the end of the show. I've lost all track of how the show works, right?
All right. So thanks everybody for listening.
Wait, we forgot
Phil?
the Patreon.
Yeah, do the patron shout outs.
Oh, please do that first.
Yeah. Plus, you took my line. I do the thanks.
Yeah, I was
semantics,
I
whatever.
was being the active player and getting us back to. I was bringing us.
Why
back
don't you read the Patreon shout-outs? How about that, Jerry?
There you go. Breathe and push.
There are none there.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, there are.
Not in my copy. Let me get back in there.
Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Okay then.
I downloaded
the old school DM: Sean Merwin, the Mad Wizard, Troy Sandlin, Will Doyle, Zach Goins, Chris Constantine, Cindy Moore, Eric Simon, Mirko Frolik, and AH.
Oh, we just did AH as well in Pandas this week. They're getting a double shout out.
Yeah. So now, thank you everyone for listening and putting up with our technical difficulties as usual.
Wow. There was a time where we were so sharp at the technical side of this. We will be again, I promise. If you are free Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, come join us live on Twitch where you can chat with other listeners in the very awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question. And listen, some of you may have more free time and could come join us on Twitch. You should.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you can't make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of their shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bonestone and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, The Gnome Cast, Janku Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and VS.
We
also forgot the FM Gamers.
Don't forget those Bicons.
Yep. We also forgot the FM Gamers. Go ahead.
After you have let the scene breathe and before you're ready to give it a push, leave us some feedback. You can reach us on the old-fashioned emails at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter. The show in the network is at Misdirected Mark. He's at Robert M. Everson. He is at GM Gerrymander. And until I get kicked off for yelling at a senator, I'm DNA Phil.
Don't feel so bad, Phil. I actually said something very disparaging against someone in government as well. So if you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can and should hopefully support our Patreon campaigns if you can. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhengu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhengu Hustle. And Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
Oh man, I have a real mic right here. We out.